Are you sure you know what you're doing?
Yeah. Come on. Welcome to A Million Ways to Make $1,000,000, and I'm excited for people to hear more about you.
Thank you for having me.
Can I tell you that one thing that I'm excited to talk about, because I think it translates directly into business, is that you occur for me as a sports family too, and that sports is a big part of who you were growing up and your life now. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a correlation in business to
all
that.
My nights and weekends.
All your nights and weekends that it's coming there. So we have today Emily with, well, listen, you have a lot of companies from there. And so I don't know if I could qualify it from, could it be accurate in saying the Sterling Group?
Sure.
That works for you?
That's what we say.
Yeah.
That's what our phone says.
Yeah, the Sterling Group. And we met probably 10 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
An introduction through your brother.
Yes.
And you and your family, brothers, mm-hmm. sister, dad, have had as great of an impact on me and my family and where we've chose to build our business, how we've done it. You have been one of the most generous people with your time and knowledge. We are forever grateful for that. Lex has spent hours in your office and hundreds and hundreds of questions that you and your team, we can't thank you enough for it. It's been so instrumental in what we're building and what we've built that we are very big fans of you. And so
that's very kind.
Thanks
We're
for
happy
being
to
here.
Do it.
Yeah. Can we go back a little bit on, I understand that you were not born in Arizona.
Correct.
You were born a little bit off the map a little bit growing up and not in the big city and coming there. Could you tell us a little bit about where you guys came from?
So my dad was Air Force. We traveled around a lot. I was actually born in Iowa while he was away at flight school. Lived there for a little bit, California, over to England, and then up to Idaho, and then settled in Arizona probably about 30 years ago now.
Yeah. And do you have a lot of memory from those moves? Or is that of just, I kind of remembered the moves going up? Or did you remember having friends in England that you said goodbye to and left?
Yes, I think England was probably my first memories. So from there, and then Idaho, and then here. But okay. Nothing really before that. Yeah,
and I've talked enough with some of your siblings about it, but Idaho
was awesome.
Yeah, that was I feel like
we lived in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I feel like you're almost looking to go back to a version of that, and we can dive into that a little bit later.
Very much.
From there, but why did you like being in the middle of nowhere?
It was just a simpler life.
Yeah.
A lot of imagination. We were kind of free range, did what we wanted, and came home when the sun came down, and gardened and did our own food and all of those things. And it was simple. I think it was easier than what our kids have today.
Yeah. You, well, I'll tell you this, and this is just how it occurs for me, that you and your siblings are some of the most successful, driven people I know. And at the same time, you guys fly under the radar rather, intentionally. But what was it like? How? How are so many, one, you come from a pretty large family.
8 of us.
8 of you. What was going on during your childhood to produce all of these disciplined, big thinking creators? What were those nights like? What were those weekends? What happened in Iowa that produced all this?
So my dad came from less than nothing. My mom was farm in the middle of nowhere. They met in grade school, when my mom's one-room schoolhouse got shut down and the county required them to be bused into the city. So they met super young. And I think the discipline of the Air Force and kind of the humble beginnings. So that's just kind of how we were raised. You stay humble. But we were extremely disciplined in our household. It was run like you're up at 5 a.m., you're reading in the morning, you're getting your workouts in before school, you're helping with the prep of breakfast, go to school, come home, do your jobs, do your homework, do your sports practices, and then to bed. So we were extremely disciplined in our household, which I think translates over to being able to set goals and accomplish that. But my dad was a firm believer in telling you, like, you can do this. You can do anything if you work hard enough. So we would set goals as a family. We set goals as individuals. And then we had weekly, like, progress updates where we would go in and have those conversations and kind of update on our goals and what we were doing to reach them and all of those things.
And was this like a one-on-one with your father, or was this like in a family setting, like on a Monday evening where it's like, all right, where's everyone at in their goals? Like, what was the reporting like?
We did a monthly one-on-one, and then we did a weekly family meeting because there were so many of us with so many different schedules. We sat in a room. This was before digital calendars and everything, so everyone had their calendars out, and we went through what everybody had that week and how we were going to accomplish that and who could support who and what, and it was just kind of the way that we functioned.
Yeah. Was this a rule with an iron fist, like you will do this, you will go, or was there an environment created that like, this is just who we were? You know, is this like a scenario where, man, there were some times I could have rolled my eyes at my dad for making me get up and go work out and do all this stuff, but I'm grateful for it now? Or was it all you knew?
So I think I'm in the older half of siblings.
Okay.
So for us, it was more of an iron fist. And as my dad kind of got pushed back from us, he realized like, oh, maybe I can loosen up a little bit. But when we were younger, I mean, it was 6 a.m. on Saturdays, there was a project. And if there wasn't something in our house, there was something that a neighbor needed help with, or there was something that church needed help with. So and that was the first half of your day. And if you did that, then you could go do what you wanted.
Okay.
So he was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But he also, like, I can remember I was probably 8 or 9 at the Arco Jesse Owens track meets. So those were, they were like citywide track meets that you would then qualify and go on to regionals and go on to state, and running in those and having him. So he used to work out of town like 4 or 5 days a week, would come home for a couple days and then was gone again. And he would make sure he was home for those. And I just remember like the pep talks and you've got this, you can do this, we're winners. And it was always the same thing. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
It's just we grew up believing we could do anything we wanted and that we were capable of anything that we wanted to do.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, your dad was a pretty great athlete.
He was. He played in high school, all sports, played football in college, and then actually was drafted into the NFL but broke his neck before doing that, which was kind of life changer.
Yeah.
So he finished out college and got into the Air Force instead.
Yeah. And was there a form of like athletics was good for me, so you will play sports, or was it just my siblings played sports, we loved it, like it's just who we were? Like, was there any sort of, I don't want to go do track, or I don't know if I want to play there?
So we were told you don't have to do sports, but you have to do something to make yourself better. You have to do something to create growth in what you're doing. So whether it was music or drama or sports, we were allowed to pick what it was, but we were told you're going to be part of something that makes you a better person, that gives back to the community in some way.
Okay. And so, where was your like natural?
So I did a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I played volleyball and I ran track and I played softball, but softball and track are same season. So I ended up doing track.
Okay.
And then I also did music. So I play 2 instruments. I play piano and drums. I'm not good at either anymore. I haven't played in like 20 years. And then I sang. So I was in choir.
Okay. And like a drum line or drum sets?
So I was in a band with some girlfriends when
this
we were
is
younger.
crazy. I didn't know this about you.
So, and I was never that great, but it was fun. We had a good time.
That was later in life in Arizona?
So that was in Arizona, yeah. That was high school and a little bit after high school.
Oh, I'm
So-
going to have to do some research on this later. We're going to find out
So
your
it was
bandmates.
before cell phones.
It was
so-
before we don't have any recordings. We'll find a VHS somewhere.
So we did that, and then we were told if you qualify for honors classes or AP classes, then you need to take them. So
Oh.
I took mostly honors classes aside from PE and like driver's ed.
Yeah. I know your siblings. There's a theme of competitiveness
Super competitive.
around here. Did you ever compete against any of your siblings, or was it just an advantage to you coming from a competitive family?
So I would say we go boy, girl most of the way down.
Yeah.
So in athletics, we weren't ever really pitted against each other aside from Amanda and Ashley because they're only a year and a half apart. And it caused some drama. But as far as sports, we normally we played hockey. We played street hockey every single day outside. And when it was too dark to rollerblade and roller skate anymore, then we played kick the can. And when you couldn't play that anymore. So we played a lot of things. I mean, a lot of fights. I can remember, you'll get a kick out of this because you know Luke. So we were probably 10, 11 in the backyard, and we had put in a tetherball set. And we were playing tetherball, and the two of us got in a fight over it. And I'm 2 years older, but we were about the same size. And I was mean as a kid. I was a little aggressive. So we're playing tetherball, and we got in a fight over who, rope or not a rope or whatever it was. And I remember Luke went inside and told on me. And my dad came outside and he said, "Emily, we do not pick on people." So I got in big trouble because I punched my brother, and my brother got in trouble for getting beat up by a girl. My dad was like, "You are not a wimp. You don't walk away from that." And I was like, "Okay, there we go."
Two separate conversations. Let's have this conversation with you.
But
and
it
now
was
Luke.
super competitive.
Yeah.
So every game we play, even now, every game devolves into who said what or how the rules actually were meant to be, so it never really left.
Yeah. Well, a message I heard from that is that I'm in this phase of what I would call the developmental phase of my children. I mean, they're 2 and 6 and 8, and I want them to have that belief that you can go create whatever you'd like if you work hard enough. And
Absolutely.
I love that was a huge part, and it makes sense that it was a huge part of your family growing up.
And one of the other things that I think is important with that is I was taught this, and I think it helps with success. And I've tried to teach it to my kids, is that other people's success doesn't diminish yours. So we are supportive of everyone and their successes. So my kids, even though they're super competitive with each other, my boys are 1 year apart in school, and they do the same sports. So it's been a little rough. And so they wrestle. They're the same weight class.
Oh, no.
So,
Yeah.
but we've had conversations where I'm like, somebody else improving doesn't make you worse. If you want to keep up, you have to work harder. But we are happy for other people's successes. And so I think that is a big part of it too, as while we were competitive with each other, we were super excited when somebody in our family accomplished something or did something good. I never felt judged by what they did. I was just always excited that they succeeded in what they were doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That is a theme of any of my professional dealings with you guys, is that, yeah, we're not looking at anyone else. We have our goals, and it's great. And if someone is doing great, we're happy for them. And if someone's struggling, we're rooting for them, and everywhere in between. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's what we try for.
Yeah. So where did your mom play in all this? So your dad traveled a lot and would be gone. It sounds like there was, it was it just, oh, dad's gone, great, we get to relax, and oh, he's home, let's, back to attention. Like, where did your mom play in all this?
Maybe a little bit, but not really. So we had schedules of every day. Well, when you have 8 kids and we're all about 2 years apart, she was pregnant with a baby my entire childhood. And so there was just lists of tasks that were yours to do around the house, and you just did them because that's what it took for the house to function the way it's supposed to. And I think it was never a question Like there was never but my friend doesn't have to, or, it was just, we're a family and this is how the house runs and this is what has to happen for it to run. So everybody just kind of pulled their weight. So we had lists of chores. Yeah. Like I go back and my husband goes, "That's insane." And I'm like, well, I won't do that to our kids, but they need to know how to work.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for that because I know how to do anything I need to do. Like I can work on a house if I need to, and I can do the electrical if I need to, and I can sweep a floor, and I can clean a toilet, and I can do my yard work because those were all things that were an expectation in our home.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like she was pretty good at delegating and running a household.
Right. And she kept a calendar and it was posted and so she updated with things that needed to be done and did all of that. And she just was very on the clock about things. And that's, I think, how you almost have to run a household with that many kids.
Yeah.
And she was very good at managing the finances. So she managed all of that because she was home and had to deal with kids needing shoes and all of that stuff. So she did a lot that I think flew under the radar.
Yeah. I mean, she just, in my interactions with her, when I've ever met with her, she just seemed nurturing and efficient. That would almost be like, what needs to get done? Great, let's make sure it's get done. And it was just, she just did it with, all my experience. I just see a smile, and she's just soft, but she seems strong. Like, soft-hearted, but like, you don't create what she's created from a family standpoint on just being a pushover or anything like that.
No, she's definitely not a pushover.
Yeah. I love that. So you participated in honor classes. What did that look like from it's time to leave high school? You're now in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Was there plans for college? Where did formal education play a role in starting your adulthood?
So I graduated high school, I think somewhere around a 4.2, 4.3 GPA.
This makes sense.
I had no plans to go to college.
Okay.
I was raised to believe that women should have children and stay home, and men are supposed to make a living. So I had a teacher in high school, my English teacher, my AP honors English teacher. We wrote these things about what we wanted to be when we got older and what our life goals were and all this stuff. And he was the first person to ever say to me, like, you can be so much more than that. Like, he read it. He actually embarrassed me. He read it in class, and then he said, "Can anybody guess whose this is?" And nobody had any idea. And he said, "Emily, stand up." And I'm thinking like, oh, yay. And he went, "You are better than this. You can do so much more than this." And I went, I was not expecting that. And so he actually talked to me about, you should go to college. You should do these things. You should have goals beyond high school. Like, you're capable. And he was a sprint coach, I believe, at track. So I switched high schools my senior year. So he was my senior English teacher and one of my track coaches. And that was the first time that I really ever even thought, well, maybe I could do college while I try and figure things out. And at that point, I didn't really have career goals. I wanted to be a mom. Yeah. That's all I knew.
Give us the synopsis of the paper. Give us the Cliff Notes. What did the paper say?
It said, I want to get married and have kids and raise wonderful children.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what I'd been raised, that's what women do.
We're going to go hunting for a husband. I'm going to get married young before I'm 25. I'm going to start having kids.
I'm going to get married at 20 and have 5 kids by the time I'm 30, right?
Okay. All right.
And so that was but it was funny because then he started talking to me and he said, "When you were younger, was this always your goal?" And I started looking back through papers that I'd kept, and I was like, no, I used to think I was going to be, I have papers where I was going to be an Olympic athlete someday, or where I was, all the kid dreams of things. And I was like, and I really like dogs, and I wanted to be a vet, or I wanted to. And he was like, you need to do what you want to do, not what you've been told that you should do. And it was the first time that I was like, maybe I will go to college. So I ended up getting offers from 3 or 4 colleges, some for academics and then sports on top of that, but they were all for weightlifting.
Okay.
Not
So not
something-
track, not volleyball.
No.
Weightlifting.
They were for weightlifting. So
This
I got
makes sense. If I remember right, your dad was a great weightlifter too at his college and still has some pretty...
Yes. So my senior year, I got into weightlifting just to be better at track. And I set a bunch of records. And so I got all these offers from like local schools, NAU, ASU, because they actually have women's weightlifting teams. I didn't know that was a thing, or powerlifting teams.
Okay.
But by that point, it was so far into it, and my parents were not really supportive of that. And so it was like my friend's mom took me to the college open houses, and my other friend's mom took me down to go meet with the counselors. And I just got to the point where I was like, it's just too much. I'm going to take a year and figure it out. I'm going to work full time and see what I can save up to see if I can afford to go to school.
Yeah. This was, when you say that someone else was taking you to college visits, this was without telling your parents?
I think they were aware. They just were like, cool, if we don't have to do it, that's fine.
Figure it out. If you want to go do it, figure it out.
If you're going to do it, figure it out, but we're not going to help.
Okay.
So, which I would say, I know you know my brothers, was different with them. My parents were like, yeah, if you want to go to college, go do that. You should do that so you can provide for a family.
Yeah. Okay.
So I ended up, I didn't go to college right away. Got a full-time job working in a finance office, which is where I'd worked summers when I was younger. And then I went to MCC, got married, dropped out, went back to school, dropped out again.
Did we make it to like a associate's degree?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, I dropped out in my first year, and then I went back, and I think I finished 1 year and dropped out again. And then I think I went back one more time, like in my late 30s, and then I was like, this is so much work on top of work and children, and what is it going to accomplish for me? It's just so that other people will be like, oh, you're so educated, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm done doing things for other people.
Yeah. It just didn't align to complete it.
Well, I didn't need it anymore.
Yeah. Well,
Like by that time, we were successful in what we were doing.
what was your role in the financial services company?
So my first role ever, I was front desk receptionist along with like 2 other receptionists, and I was a file clerk.
Okay.
And I did all the filing on all the things.
Any qualifications for that? Any licensing to handle any of the
None.
staffing? So just
I was
front desk,
Yes, front desk.
admin type role. Okay. And where did it evolve from there?
So from there, the office that I was working out of actually closed. So they closed that office, opened up another one further away, and I was like, I'm not driving that far. So I went and got another job as front desk for another firm. But when I was sitting with them, they had a job opening for a day trader, so for a Series 7 licensed day trader. And so I said to the guy, like, if you're willing to pay for their licenses, if I come and I do this and I go to the classes on my own time, will you let me do the licensing? And if I do that, then can I be next in line for that job? And he was this funny old man. And he just kind of laughed at me and said, sure, if you want to do that, you go for it. So I negotiated all of that in, and I took my Series 7, my Series 63 licenses when I was there, and passed them pretty easily, and then moved back into being like customer service, making trades, taking calls from clients, and doing that stuff with his firm. Then I got in a car accident, and I was out of work for about 4 months. And in that time frame, he replaced me. So I had to go find a new job.
Yeah.
And I ended up with a property casualty firm. So then I got my property casualty licenses and my life and health licenses so that I could do that. I was with Liberty Mutual, and at that time they had just taken over Prudential's book of business. Okay. So I got all of those licenses, and then I worked there for only about a year. And then they closed that office. The lease was up on that office, and it was out in Scottsdale, which was already like an hour drive each way for me. And they moved even further out, like past the 303. And I was like, I'm not driving 2 hours a day each way to get to work. So I quit that job.
Okay.
And then that's when I actually ended up back working with my father. At that time, I was going, I'm trying to think life-wise. So I ended up, actually, I worked at a jewelry store for a couple years in between.
So you were licensed.
Fully licensed.
The 7 and 63, there was no correlation with the additional licenses that you got.
No.
So we're
They're
finding
just all
out is you're a
different
good
lines.
test taker.
I take tests fantastically well. They're all
Okay.
different. They're just different lines of insurance and securities products that you're allowed to then sell or
Yeah.
work with.
And it was like, all right, I had my chances here. I'm going to just get a job somewhere else. In the meantime, we're looking for closer to home.
Yes. So
And-
I worked in a jewelry store for a couple years, and then I did hang my licenses with a firm, and I worked there very part-time. But to be there, I had to get my 6 license. So then I had my 7, my 6, my 63, my life and health, and my property casualty licenses all hung there.
You say this so casually. Those tests are not easy for most.
They're rough. They're rough.
Yeah.
I have a good memory.
Okay.
I would say my husband would disagree. I can't remember our wedding date, but I can remember facts.
You have good study habits, and you can remember be a good test taker around it.
Yes, and then after that is when I ended up working for my dad again.
Okay.
When I had my first kid, I was like, I could no longer do full time. Talked through with my husband, and he was like, somebody has to be home with our kids, whether it's you or me. He was a teacher at the time and coach and loved what he did. And I was like, yeah, I don't care for my job, so that's fine. So I started an online store where I did little girls' clothing, and I used to sell furniture out of my garage.
Yeah.
And then I worked 2 days a week at my dad's firm. And I, at that point, had done compliance at some of the other firms and had assisted compliance officers. And so I took over compliance for his firm, and I just used to work. So my father-in-law would watch my son. He retired when I had my first kid, and he would watch my son 2 days a week for 12 hours. And I would work 2 12-hour shifts so that I could then be home the rest of the time.
Wow.
And so that's how I got involved with Sterling.
Okay. And was it your experience in admin that was attractive to, like, yes, hey, we need some help, like, even if you can help us out 2 days a week, like, come and help us? Or was it the licenses that you had carried before, or a little bit of both?
So the licenses allowed me, so I did get one more license when I started there. I got a 26 license, which is a supervisory license. But to get a 26 or a 24, you have to have the licenses that you're supervising. So it was really helpful that I had all the other licenses. And then when I worked at the firm where I got my 7, I actually ended up assisting the compliance officer there with a lot of his stuff before I left. And so it was a role that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I like paperwork. I like reading all of the fine print. I enjoy all of that.
Yes.
So put me behind a desk with a bunch of paperwork, and I'm happy as can be. I love spreadsheets. I love organization, all of those things. So it was just a good fit. They needed somebody. Their branch office manager had retired, and I had quit my job and was looking for something. So it just worked, and I was like, we'll give it a try. We'll see if we can work together, because obviously I'm working and they don't think I should be.
Yeah.
So it was a little rough at first, but it worked well.
Was there any sort of hesitancy on either side going to work with family? Because your mother was involved in the business in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I guess she was. She wasn't involved as heavily early on.
Okay.
It didn't come until later that she got more heavily involved.
And at least one sibling was there.
So at that time, I think Luke worked there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And was
doing
there
sales?
Is it any hesitancy around, I'm going to go work with family, I've heard that you shouldn't do that, or listen, we grew up fighting over tetherball, don't put us all in the
Right.
same office together? Or was it, oh no, this is great, like I get to go work with family?
So for us, I thought it was wonderful because I trust my family explicitly. And so I just knew, like, I was working with people who had the same values as me, valued similar ethics and hard work and honesty. And so it was not a hard decision for me to make. I think the hardest part was, can I handle working with my dad? And if I disagree with something he's doing, am I strong enough to say no? Because in a compliance role, like, he's a sales guy. You have to be able to say no to sales guys.
Yeah.
So that was my only hesitancy, is like, as his daughter, do I have the ability to be like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. That's not within the bounds of what's okay. But as far as working with them, I never had any worries.
Did you decide before you took that job or that role that you were in a place to be able to stand your ground to both your dad and your brother? Or was there like this coming out moment of like, yeah, it was no longer in alignment to be quiet? Or were you just like, was that just not an issue for you? You just came in like, listen, if I'm here, we're going to do it right. And you better be okay with that.
So I think for me, if I backtrack a little bit, so I was married at 19 and divorced at 22, 23, somewhere at 22, I think. Wasn't the best marriage. I probably shouldn't have ever happened. And I learned a lot of lessons and a lot about standing up for myself and a lot about what I wanted in life and what I was okay with and what I wasn't. So I was never going to get married again. I was going to just be the fun aunt for the rest of my life, I was pretty sure. And I met my husband, and it just clicked. And I was like, here's my list of things that you can't do, that you can't be, that I won't put up with. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm okay with all that. And I was like, wait, what? And we talked, and the more we talked, the more I was like, okay, this is my person. Like, this is the person that I can do life with. And so marrying him, once again, changed my life plans. But it also made me realize that I could tell somebody, this is important to me and it matters. And I could hold that line. Yeah. And that, because my husband is not a pushover, not by any means. And it's funny because he'll tell people, Emily's the first girl that ever put me in my place. Because he would do things and I would be like, oh, no, that's just not okay. We're never doing that again. Yeah. He would be like, and we talk through it, and I'd explain this is why, and this is how it makes me feel, and so I think having gone through that experience, I just was like, I'm not putting myself in a situation where I am going to compromise who I am or what my belief system is. And so I just had that conversation with him. I said, look, I am happy to work with you. I think that this works, but at the same time, I can't bend the rules or I can't break the rules for you. Don't ask me to. If I say no, the answer is no. We can have a conversation about it and maybe I come to your side of the table, but I'm not just doing this to make your life easier. This is my career on the line too. This is my licensing, my ability to provide for my family. And so we had a good conversation about that before we worked together. And so I think because there were clear boundaries set, it worked well.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I admire most about you is that you're strong, but you don't occur for me as confrontational. And I think that that's an art or a skill set to
Thank you.
Say the things that most would think might be uncomfortable. And you have this way of bringing it about as this is the best for the current project or the deal that we're creating or for us. And yeah, these are our boundaries. This is where it's at. And if it works for you, let's continue on. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. But you have this way of being strong and stern and no one's going to mess with you. But at the same time, no one leaves thinking oh my gosh, she's so mean. Or, you have this way of, it's an art. It's great.
I feel if everybody's on board and everybody feels taken care of and everybody feels like it's a good deal for them, then you're more likely to be successful in it.
Okay.
So, because if it's all for me, then what motivation do you have?
Yeah.
So it's similar life story with my children. I tell my kids, we want to be friends with the people who want to be friends with us. So if friendship is too much work or they don't like you for who you are or how you are, then they're not your people and it's okay to move on.
Yeah.
And so I feel the same way in business. I want to do business with people who want to do business with me.
Yeah.
And if we're not okay how we are, then that's okay. Maybe we can try again later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. So you move to your employee, now W-2 for a registered investment advisory, and as well as insurance products, you now have a license that allows you to be, the technical term is a manager or a leader, a supervisor in the organization. Your father gets older. It's time for him to go and serve and grandpa and do all the things from there. Take us through the evolution to where you went as admin and supervisor, because you played an important part in the company from that role. Like you did, like to be a supervisor. And that was right around the time that I met you.
Yeah.
And when I had an experience with Sterling, Emily was a part of it. Like Emily was you were part of the decision making, but you were also just what I would call maybe a key employee. Like what would be the equivalent to like an executive or a director inside of the company?
I think that fits.
Yeah. Take us through the evolution of how it went from there to evolve into the reformation of the Sterling Group to where you went from W-2 to partner and how that transition looked.
So when I was first there, my father was actually with a different firm. And I supervised, he had a pretty big group of people all across the United States. So I think I supervised, over time I grew into that role. And I supervised, I think, over 1,200 reps at one point. Wow. So I was doing all of the managerial, and then I had other supervisors in the individual branches that did interviews and processes that then came to me that were then submitted into the bigger company. And it just was a role that it was easy for me. It made sense. Like I loved the structure. I love to follow rules. If there's a no left-hand turn, it doesn't matter if it's midnight and there's nobody there, I am turning right. I am that person.
Yeah.
I always have been. And I say much to my husband's chagrin, I'm sure. He'll be like, just turn. I'm like, nope.
The light is
Our
red.
children are in the car. They're seeing the example we're setting.
Yeah.
So it fit really well for me. And so I kind of moved through that. And then a couple years into that was when my father decided, he was like, I just can't keep traveling. I can't keep doing this. I'm going to go smaller and I'm just going to keep my local stuff. So he started his own company. And that's when my mom got more involved. And did a transition of some of the clients and then just kind of built his business back up doing that, but was local and was able to stay home more and do those things. So he was around more so there's a big gap between me and my siblings. There's about 16 years in there. And so I'm doing this. There's still siblings at home. And so he just wanted to be home more and be more involved. And so when that happened, I moved over and was just like I ran the branch at that point. And so he built that back up a little bit. And then he got to the point where he was like, I'm kind of ready to coast. I brought in some of these younger guys. They're building their teams and doing their things. And so I ran the offices. He would come when he had appointments and we would sit in a weekly meeting and go over important things. But even his emails were forwarded to me and I responded on his behalf on everything that came in. And so at that point, I think...
you salaried at that point?
At that point, I was salaried.
Do you participate in any of the growth of the firm from
so
like a commission structure? So at that point, I was just salaried. Okay.
Yep. So I was just salaried at that point, and they were super flexible with me because I still had little kids. So I would come into the office and we soundproofed my office, and so I brought my newborns with me until they were old enough that my father-in-law could watch them. So for the first year of their lives, they just came to work with me every day. Oh, wow. So it was it was still in my benefit to do that. And so about that time is when he started kind of trying to pull back and do some stuff. And I know you know Luke. So him and Luke would butt heads about, Luke, you're so good at this. You should be hiring more people and doing more business. And Luke was like, I don't want to hire more people because I just feel like I'm burning through bridges and I'm burning up my friend group. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. So there was some friction there.
Hire insurance agents and financial advisor type roles.
Yes,
like
and
bring
build a
in
group of people, build a team. At that point, we were kind of a team-oriented. Yeah. Is what it was.
And in that space, there's a benefit to Luke hiring somebody because he would make some form of override on his team underneath. Okay.
Correct. So you can be a personal producer or you can hire a whole bunch of people that made money and you made money when they made money because you supervised and you helped.
You trained them, you introduced them, you helped them get licensed, all the above.
So he always hated that. And it was how my dad became good at what he did. Like that was what he really loved about the business. So they butted heads from early on with those things. And I just processed the business and I did those things, but I did sit in all the meetings where those things happened. So then we had kind of an exodus. One of the bigger guys at the company realized kind of, I think, what everyone does in that, like, hey, I'm good enough at this now. I could start my own company. And he left. And it was devastating. for my dad because he felt like he had put all this time and all this effort in and all this. And then this guy just took a third of the company and left. So at that point, we were discussing other opportunities, other options. And I think this is about the time that I met you.
Yeah.
We just realized that writing a life insurance policy pays you one time. And then you have to go find somebody else to write another life insurance policy on. And you have to do that every single month to continue to pay your bills. Same with annuities. And then with money under management, that's great until the market goes down. And then when the market goes down, every single client you have leaves because somebody else has numbers that, they back tested with data and they're not real numbers, but they look really pretty on a spreadsheet. And every time that the market goes down, all of your clients leave and you go steal somebody else's clients. So you're just trading every time the market goes down. And it just felt like this never ending, just slogging through this stuff. And so that's when we started looking at alternative assets as something that could maybe stay up when the market went down, something uncorrelated. And so at that point, I think right around the same time is when Matthew, who is the other partner now, was brought in to help with a whole bunch of the computer programming and the commission systems on the back end and a whole bunch of these things like that. And he did some computer programming things that he does and went into some of these like things that we just took as gospel as being in finance for 20 years and was like, yeah, that's not right. That's not really how that works. And he went, if you program this and you do this and it runs it to infinity, it actually is this. And we went, oh my God, he's right. And so it really made us start to look at everything and how can we really help people with their funds and how can we really make a difference for our clients because our clients are our friends and our neighbors and our family members and so at that point we got into alternative assets and we did the homes, which you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And that was horrendous because nobody is ready to actually manage a home. They think they are, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not responsive. They don't do those things. So that was our first foray and that failed miserably. And we thought, okay, well, what if we start a fund where we buy the homes? Actually, let me back up a step. So then we thought, okay, we're going to invest in a fund where somebody else is buying and managing the homes, but our clients are getting a bigger return.
Yeah.
So we started doing that and investing in other alternative asset funds with our clients' money. And we went to some alternative asset conferences to try and really just wrap our brains around what it was and what the compliance on that looked like and what we needed to have in place. And realized very quickly that the commissions on those were really high compared to selling an annuity or selling life insurance. So then we started going, well, how can they pay a 10% commission up front? And life insurance is 6 or 3 or annuities are 5. And so we started researching different funds and looking at prospectuses and seeing what they were doing and realized we can do that. And they're making a much larger amount on the back end and they're servicing their clients every single day with their work instead of writing a policy and then having to find another one. And then your old client gets kicked to the curb because their policy doesn't pay you again. And so we just felt like it fit from a servicing our client standpoint, from building our business standpoint, from doing the right thing for just everyone involved. And that was kind of how we got into that space and decided to make that switch.
Yeah. Tell me how you went from admin, W-2 employee to partner, owner in the transition. How did that come about? Like, how'd you get in? I think there's so many people that are working for a firm. Like you even said it. I ran the company. Like when when your dad started to taking a little bit of a step back, like it occurred for you as you pulled a lot of weight around the group. Like you did your part. How did you evolve from compliance and supervisor to, if we're going to do this, I'm going to be an owner with you? Like was there a point where Luke came to you and said, hey, yeah, we'd like to hire you to do this? Or was this your idea? Or how did it come about where you became a partner?
So I think part of that was after that exodus of a lot of the reps that used to work there. we had a conversation and my dad pulled Luke in and said, you have to build this business back up. We're not going to be able to pay the bills like we should because all of these people left and we're not getting that override anymore. And Luke was like, I don't want to. And it's not fair to put the stress of that on me. Like, you're asking me to do something that
Go build a sales organization.
Every single day that I hate to do.
Okay.
And he was like, I don't want to do something I hate to do. And so we sat down and we just tried to brainstorm. Like, okay, if we're not going to build this back to what it is, and for us too, it was like, our parents need to be able to retire. Like, and if this continues to just kind of fall apart, then what he worked his entire life for is gone. And so we sat down and kind of went, how can we help? How can we do this? How can we make this a thing? And that's when we said, you know what? I think we need to kind of switch our focus and we need to do this alternative investment thing. And so we went and we sat with, I believe, Lance. I call my dad Lance. I've worked with him so many years. People think it's weird, but so we went and sat with my dad. And we just said, like,
who? You,
so
Luke,
I think it
Lance.
was me and Luke.
Okay.
At first. And we said to him, like, we have this different vision from what you have. And
this is something that you and Luke have been working on together.
So we had talked through it and we just said, like, we don't want to build the company back to what it is. And working with reps every day who turn in incomplete business and who do paperwork wrong and who I turned it in at 5 p.m. No, you didn't. You turned it in at 7. So it's very tedious.
Yeah.
And you're always the bad guy and so we just kind of went, like, is this the road that we want to go down and are we rebuilding? And at the time, like, I still did sales and I did some of that stuff, but I didn't enjoy it at all. I like paperwork. And so, so we just kind of had a discussion and we said, that's not the road we want to go down anymore. And we did more research into it and realized that we could do more for our clients in a better atmosphere for us and just kind of made the decision to make that change. And at that time, my dad was like, I don't have it in me to build another business or to do this. And so our discussion was, okay, well, if we can use your clients as the base, because my dad's client base was probably 60 or 70% of the business at this point.
Okay.
So we kind of said, if we can use your clients as a base and you'll help us with starting this, then we'll all share ownership in it together. And we will buy you out of it at some point when you're ready to retire and you feel like it's possible, like your clients are transferred over. And then at that point, we brought Matthew into the discussion because I was like, I don't know how to take all the numbers and all the things that we know and put them into formats that work or crunch data in ways that make sense. And he has this amazing ability to see patterns in things and to do things. So background on him, he was a linguist in the Army.
Oh, yeah.
But ended up working for the NSA as what do they call it? Certified ethical hacker. And so he did years and years in government programming and has presented at the White House and has done all of these things and then moved home to be closer to family. So at that point, we kind of went, okay, with the three of us, we have what we need. We have Luke, who's sales, who can continue to get us clients in and service those clients. We have back office, which is me, with the ability to run the companies and run the project management. And then I had Matthew, who had the ability to program all of these systems that we were going to need and kind of he's super intelligent and had this just unique perspective on almost everything we did, which was awesome because I've only ever worked in finance. And so I would say, well, we need this. And he goes, why? I'm like, because that's how you do it. Why? And so I had to research and I'd go, okay, you know what? You don't. It's just industry standard, but you actually don't. And so that helped us in a lot of situations as well. And so the three of us then talked with my parents and kind of said, if you'll help with the transition, then we'll own it all equally and we will buy you out of your portion at some point, which will pay for retirement. And so that's kind of where it started. And we just kind of muddled into it and slowly transferred investment advisory clients over to being clients at the new funds that we set up.
Matthew reminds me of, I mean, I've been in plenty of rooms with him and he doesn't say much.
No.
But when he does, it is intentional and it is
poignant.
Like, you better have an answer because he'll just ask why. There's this scenario, I wish I could remember where I heard this story. It was like a story of a daughter that would cut the ends off of a ham before she would cook it.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and her husband was like, "Why do you do that?" And she's like, "I don't know. That's what you do." And she's like,
Wait,
"What?
that's
No,
how
but
you
like,
cook a
why?
ham.
Like, Mom, why do you cut off the ends?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know why you're doing it, but that's how I could fit it in my pan." And it was just like, it seems like that's
Yes.
the way Matthew thinks of, like, why would you do that? And then he has you to go and hunt down the answer to that.
Well, and so I always go like, I need you to program it like this. And he says, that's not the best way. And I'm like, but it's the way it has to be. And he'll be like, why? I'm like, because, and sometimes it's, well, that's how taxes work. So you have to do it that way. And he'll be like, well, that's dumb. And I'm like, well, have that fight with the government sometime later.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I'll go, oh, you know what? You're right. That's kind of how it's always done, but that's because it's big, huge brokerage houses with millions of people that do it. We don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
We could do it differently. And so that has been huge for us to have that outside, just that intelligent kind of overview of what we're doing.
Yeah.
To ask why.
I've asked Luke this question.
Okay.
So I know his answer to it, of which I'll share with you. But first, I just want to hear yours.
Okay.
How did you go from, Luke and Lance could have looked at this of like, yeah, like we can just hire Emily to do the back office. Like we can hire her to do the compliance. She's done it for years. It's great. She might want to raise, because it's maybe more work or a startup or
Right.
new LLCs and entities that need to be set up and new rules and new conferences to go to. Like, so we might have to, like, how did you go from, no, I'm a founder in this. Like I have a seat at the table. Like I will bring enough value to you as a partner. I'm more than an employee. How did you create that?
So I think for me, it just was where I saw it going, and I wasn't going to take a different answer. But I also think it comes back to the way that I've always dealt with situations, or the way that I was, I guess, taught to, is that if everybody is involved and if everybody feels valued and if everybody has their weight to pull, then you get the best from everybody. And so we talked through different scenarios of different things and how things could work. And when we came out of it, we just were like, you know what? We are equal partners no matter what. In every company that we're going to open from here on out, either we're all in or we're all out.
Who's speaking this? Whose concept is this?
This is Matthew and Luke and I. So we sat in a meeting and said, like, hey, eventually Dad's going to be gone. How are we running this? And my husband, if you ask, will tell you that I am the most valuable. They can't run the business without me because I run all of the projects and I know the intimate details of every client and every payment ever made.
Ops and sales, right? Ops and
Yes.
sales. We'll have this
But if
forever
you ask
debate,
Luke's
right?
wife, she
Yeah.
will tell you that he is the most valuable member of the team, because without him bringing in new clients and bringing in money, it doesn't matter what I do if we don't have money to fund it.
And projects,
Yes.
right? Like the business development side of it or whatever it may be,
You
right?
can't do, yes. And if you ask Matthew's wife, she'll tell you that he is the most valuable person, because Matthew's programming has allowed us to have a team of 6 people instead of 40. Like anything that I do more than once, I go to him and I say, hey, look, this is something that I'm doing repetitiously once a week. Can you program me out of this job so I can take on this other thing? And he does. And he's amazing at it. And so she will tell you, like, without him, our company doesn't function, because we couldn't afford to pay 40 employees or 50 employees at what we're doing. And so we just kind of realized that there will be different times where some of us will have to pull more, or there will be times when my job is tougher or Luke's job is tougher. But that overall, if we're all giving everything and we're all supporting and we're all pulling where we stand as hard as we can, that I would rather be in that situation than try and say, well, I worked 40 hours this week and you worked 20, so this week I get more. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes smarter is just smarter.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be based on time.
I want to hear, like, inside of your mindset right then and there, Luke, Matthew come to you and say, Emily, this is what you're making currently. We are going to give you a $150,000 raise to help us start this new venture. What would that have looked like, taking that home, going from where you were at that day? Like, what mindset were you in around that? Or were you like, no, absolutely not? Like, what do you think the answer to that could have been?
Oh, I would have been tempted.
Because there's a security factor to
Right.
that. It's a sure thing.
But at the same time, like, I knew how much of that was dependent on me. And so I'm like, if I leave and go somewhere else, this doesn't work. But I feel similarly about my brothers. So I don't know that conversation would ever happen. It's just not the way we function.
Yeah.
But also, like, for them, Luke had never run a business before. I'd run multiple. Like, I actually had, so when I had my youngest girl, I realized, like, oh my gosh, all the boutique clothing is so expensive, but I want my kid to wear all those cute things and do all of that. And so I went, where are these boutiques buying this clothing from? Oh, they're getting it from China. I can order things from China. So I went, Frozen at the time was huge, and these Frozen pajamas were like $32 a pair.
I remember this.
And I was like, I can't afford to pay $32 for a pair of pajamas for my 1-year-old. But she was obsessed. So I went and I looked up and I figured out, and I stayed up until 1 a.m. so I could talk to someone over in China about ordering things and doing things. And I figured out that I could bulk order them for about $4 a pair. I had to order 100 of them, but I could bulk order them. So I sent out a message to all my mom friends at the time. I think Facebook was kind of a thing. And I just said, I'm ordering these. I can get them for $10 a pair. Who wants them? And I sold out of the entire order before I ever placed the order. And so I did that. And I did it with a couple other things that my daughter really wanted. And then I started an online store. So I just would bulk order in anything that was cool at the time, anything that my daughter wanted, anything that was cute. And then I listed them online. And I used to do these online sales on Facebook before they changed all the algorithms. So I had run that successfully. I was running my dad's business at the same time. And so I had just a lot of experience with running a business. And neither Matt or Luke did. So for them, they were like, that's
where your
not something.
value was to say, I'm a partner.
Right.
I'm not an employee anymore.
Right. This is what I am, and take it or leave it. But we also kind of discussed, like, okay, well, if this fails miserably, like, at what point do you stop paying me? Right. Or at what point do I stop paying you? And so it was kind of a, let's just do this and we sink or swim together.
Yeah.
Because if I'm an employee and it gets bad, I'm jumping ship. I have to think about my family and my children and providing for them. And so we just kind of decided it's all or nothing, and we're all in.
I love that.
And it's been the same ever since.
You typically get, at least in my experience, somebody that is in the compliance side. I feel like this pattern of favors safe.
I definitely do.
Like, like, I know what it took for you guys, or at least a peek inside of what it took for you guys to build what you have, and we'll dive into more of what that is. But what was that like from this is nice. Like, I show up, I'm good at my job, I do my job, I get paid for my job, to, like, this is my company now. There's your day-to-day might not have changed, but certainly the responsibility.
The paradigm changes.
Yeah, came. How did you handle the shift coming from a rule follower, by the book, security, like, from there to what I would call this, your
great unknown.
Yeah,
for us,
this
it really was.
Jump into entrepreneurship. How was that transition for you?
So I think for me, like, my dad was an entrepreneur. We were kind of raised with that. You can do anything you put your mind to. So it wasn't super scary to me. And I also, like, it sounds bad, but I'd been in compliance for enough years and had a pretty good resume. And I was getting job offers for wonderful jobs that would have taken me away from my kids more pretty regularly at that point. And so I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's go hard. Like, we have enough money coming in from our current client base to cover what we need to cover. And we just have to build this quick enough. And so for me, there was no hesitation. I just was like, let's go. If we fail, let's fail fast and figure out what we're doing right or wrong. Sorry. Yeah. And then, and so it was just kind of full, because I was like, I'm employable. I'm not worried about being able to go get a job. I can go work at McDonald's tomorrow. I can, right? And so I just was like, but how often do you, yes, right? I told you, I sold furniture out of my garage. My sister started a furniture company. That started with her and I going to auctions. And we would stay out all night long and bid on auction items. And then we would load them up in our car and we would bring them back half to her house, half to mine. We would sell them on, what was it, Craigslist.
Oh, yeah. I bought my first couch with my wife from you guys. I remember
We would
this.
sell them on
before I knew
Craigslist.
you. I only knew Luke at that point. And so that was kind of random.
We
That
were good
was
at it.
Yeah.
And then we would load up these things and we would offer delivery for extra. And my sister and I, who both had like littles, and we would load our kids in 3 or 4 car seats in the back of the car and we would go deliver furniture. So, I mean, I have always been like, I've never felt like I couldn't provide or that I couldn't make money if I needed to. And so for me, I was like, but how often do you get the opportunity to do something that could be epic, to do something that could impact your kids generationally, that gives you the opportunity to have freedom of your schedule if you want it, or to do those things. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. It was, let's go and let's go hard and let's make it successful because I don't want to go back to what it was.
Yeah. So now you are transitioning into the world of private placement and alternative investments. You're raising millions of dollars now, and you're going from insurance policies to essentially writing $5 and tens of millions of dollar checks.
Yes.
Where did that play from a standpoint of compliance and your involvement into it? Because in my experience, Luke raises and the deals come accordingly.
Yes.
Right? Hey, Luke, we've got this great project.
We need to raise money.
We need to raise
ready,
money.
set, go.
Right? Well, at least I would see is that, you know, Emily, is this a good project? What do we like? Do we do this deal? And you go in and pick it apart and vet the deal and make sure it's in alignment with what the company's goals are. Mm-hmm. And it looks to me as if, like, you know, everyone kind of looks at you and says, are we doing this deal or not? You give it the thumbs up, and now you're writing huge checks.
I always tell people I'm not a yes, I'm a no. So when projects come into me, if they make it through me, there's a chance. I am the person that says no. So they come in and I vet them and I research them, and I think one of my skills in life is problem solving. And so I'm very good at just tearing these things apart. And I am super conservative with money, with everything, with returns, and so I go through.
I don't think you're pessimistic. I think
not at all.
I think you're curious and conservative.
I just plan for worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm hoping for best case, but I'm also planning for worst case so that if it's worst case scenario, it's still successful.
Okay.
It's kind of how I live my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we go through, and it's kind of, I'm a gatekeeper. And so I would go through from a compliance standpoint, from a background on the people we're working with standpoint. Like I pulled background checks and I would do all these different, and then once we got through that, if it passed that muster, then I would say to Matthew, now the way my brain is working on this is I need you to tell me weather patterns in this area, or I need you to tell me income in this area. I need reports on all of these things. And he would go and just compile this data for whatever the project was that we were looking at, so that then we could verify all of the outside data that would make this successful. And then we would bring Luke in and we would say, is this sellable? Is this sexy enough that people want to invest in it? Is this something that you can talk about and it's simple enough to understand, right? And Luke's so skilled at taking really hard concepts and making them easy to understand. And so that's kind of for us, for vetting a project. First, we make sure that it makes sense financially. And then we go in and we look at any other factor that we can possibly come up with that could affect it. And then we go, is it sellable? Because even the best projects maybe aren't sellable in the markets that we're in.
Yeah. What skill set do you attribute to being good at it? We've talked about your background. It didn't come in business development. It didn't come in real estate development. No. It wasn't in, business economics and trampoline parks and mansion spec builds and all the above, solar companies and all these things that you guys have owned. Where does Like, what skill set has made you effective at vetting a deal that you might have never participated in, like in an industry or a domain that you've never been in?
So I think I'm super detail oriented. And so that helps me a lot because there's not much that I don't catch. And then my background in compliance was really helpful because I did so much legal and so much compliance for 20 years that there are things when I see it and I go, oh yeah, that's not right. Oh, that can't function that way. I think the licensing that I had helps too because I learned how money functions in almost every capacity. So how it trades, how the banks handle it, and so I think I catch red flags because of years of background. But I honestly think the skill set that I'm a problem solver, and I think that is probably the best skill that I have that I bring to the table because I'm constantly looking and reworking and going, okay, so this part doesn't work, but if you change this out for this, or you do this, or you do this, then this is successful. Matthew, does this work in this situation? Can you run numbers on this? Can you? And so, but I think it's just being detail oriented, and I don't mind putting in the work. Like there's no time limit on it. So if I'm vetting a project, some take me an hour and some take me 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And for me, it's just a matter of seeing it through to the end.
Wow. Yeah. And is there any angst around, hey, we're looking at this project and it's a solar company or it's a big spec build or I understand a couple of stories that you had to write multiple $1 million checks for investments into things and it was quick. Like, how does that affect you, the rule follower? Let me go and see if this is a good deal. And it's like time is of the essence. Like, we've got to act now. We've got to go. Is that the
So I struggle
problem
with those
solving?
ones. I struggle with those ones a lot. And a lot of those things, like I will, so we had a deal that was out of state with a pest control company actually, and got all their finances, got all their things, did all this stuff. And for me, I went, that's just not enough. I'm not comfortable. And so I said, what else do you have? What other assets? What else can you bring to the table? And they went, well, we
From
have
like a collateral standpoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we have a house. And I'm like, yeah, that's not enough. Well, we have this other property. Well, so you come to find out they own 3 homes. And I'm like, if what you're doing is honest and the numbers you gave me are real and everything is what you say it is, then you should have no problem putting up your home, your vacation home, and your property that you're going to build a home on because you're being honest.
Yeah.
And so I have just learned over time. So I am, right? Luke goes, oh, it's a good deal, sign it. And I go, no, they're going to collateralize every penny that we're giving them against the real estate that they own. And they're going to give me a personal guarantee on it. And we're going to get this that supersedes bankruptcy. And so we've learned over time different things to make us more comfortable. But I also did get on a flight without telling them and went down to the headquarters and verified the number of trucks, the number of employees, I stood in the parking lot and counted.
Wow.
Because that made me feel better because I was verifying the information that they gave me.
Dollar amount roughly like
I think that was only $2.5 million.
Yeah,
so,
only $2.5
only
million.
$2.5.
Right?
But
yeah,
that's a big deal to me because like I've said before, that's my neighbors, that's my family, that's our friends. And so every penny is super important to me. And so for me, I was like, it's not a big deal. I can jump on a flight to Washington. I'm just going to go down there. He doesn't have to meet me. He doesn't even have to know I'm there. I'm just going to go down and see if the operation is what he says it is. And I showed up and I literally sat across the street and counted employees that came in because I said, how does your day work? Oh, we start at 6 a.m. We do this team meeting. So I sat outside at 5:30 and I watched as people came in and it worked exactly like he said it worked. And I was like, okay, with the collateral, with the finances that we know, with all of these things and everything that he said matched up with everything that I saw, we're good.
Yeah.
But so I'm willing to go jump on a plane because otherwise I just feel like I can't say yes.
Yeah, who you're being to your partnership and your clients is that of an owner, if they maybe even answering the question that we had of how did you make that transition? It's being willing to do whatever's necessary.
Right. And I feel like that's the truth with all of my partners. They're all willing to pull in whatever capacity is needed.
Okay. Can we talk about something that's important to Lex, my wife?
Absolutely.
She's beyond grateful for your mentorship, for your guidance, all those hours you put in to be able to answer all the questions she's asked you. And there's something I've seen her experience in being a leader in a company or even an owner in a company, that here's the lone female in this meeting.
Always.
Like you come in, you're a paper person. Mm-hmm. So you come in
with my
notepads, you're ready to go, and you document.
Yes.
And you start what occurs for me is the vetting process. Mm-hmm. They might not understand that at the time. Fill me in on did you get that, Miss Note Taker over there? Like, are you keeping minutes for this meeting?
Right. Whose assistant are you?
Yeah. Like, tell me what that is like. I mean, you're in meetings where you're, distributing large amounts of cash and doing multi-million-dollar deals. I mean, I think you guys have multiple real estate projects that exceed $10 million per project. Many. And hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investments, and you're viewed as the note taker or the assistant or the secretary. How is that for you, and how have you dealt with that as it's happened? Assuming that I'm accurate and it has happened.
My entire career.
Yeah, like what have you done to deal with that? Does it just not faze you? Is there a part of that where you get some, like a little bit of
some sick joy?
Yeah, when they realize that you're the no, like, oh, by the way, you realize you're trying to get past her, right?
Right.
If for this deal to go through, like, how have you dealt with that?
So I have dealt with that my entire career in finance. It is mostly men. When I was younger, I would never wear my contacts because glasses made me look older. Now I just like my glasses more. I would always put my hair in these severe buns so that I looked older, and I always wore suits and power suits and heels, and
I belong here.
Yes, and I used to try and prove that. And in these conversations about education and I just got to the point where I was like, I am so done trying. I went to our first conference for alternative investments, and I met a guy who runs these successful motel chains inside of funds, really eccentric, really awesome. And he turned to me, and this is after we went to dinner, had these conversations, and the next day I passed him in one of the meetings or one of the classes, and we stopped and we were chatting a little bit, and he says to me, you look like you're a really great mom. And I went, that's what you took away from the conversations about investments that we've had, is that on the last day of a conference, when I'm dressed more comfortably, I look like a really great mom. We didn't talk about our children at all. He knows I have children, but none of that, right? And I just went, and I literally said to him, Luke's standing next to me. He's at this conference with me. And I said, I'm going to let that slide because I really like you. But why didn't you say to Luke, you look like a great dad? And he kind of looked at me, and I just was like, just food for thought. So I coached girls' sports a lot when I was younger. My assistant coach was a male that was probably 20 years older than me. And we would walk onto the field, and they would walk over to him and say, we need your lineup, sir. And I would be like, I'm the coach. That's me. I'll be doing it, right? And so I have dealt with it, I think, because of my choice of career in daily life. It used to really bother me. I mean, I dressed different for it, and I would make sure that they knew who I was. And then I got to the point where I realized that it was to my benefit because I got to see who people really were. I got to see how people treat people that they think aren't as important as them or aren't on the level that they're on. And I realized that the way that people treated me was much more open and honest than they were when they walked into a room and they knew that I was the person that made the decisions. And so I kind of made a conscious effort at that point to be like, you know what, it's okay. I know my value in this company and I know what I bring, but not being seen as the core decision maker or the person who does those things actually worked in my benefit. And there were several times where people came into the office and my front desk receptionist was out on maternity leave or whatever it is, and I was filling in because somebody needs to sit at the
It's what
front
you
desk.
do when
and
you're the owner.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it needed to be there. And they would come in and I'd say, oh, can I get you some water? And they would be super rude to me. And then we would walk into the meeting and they would continue until they realized that I was the person that was making the decision. And I was like, yeah, this can be over. Like, if you're going to treat my staff like that, or you're going to treat another individual like that, you're probably not the caliber of person we want to do business with.
Yeah.
And so I think I just used it to my advantage. And I'm not, I mean, you know this, I don't want to be in front of the spotlight. I am happy to sit with my door shut and never talk to anyone. And so for me, it was okay. And I just realized, like, I bring value and people don't have to see that for me to know that I do.
What would you say, having that experience, to somebody that, a female specifically, is looking to become a business owner or enter into a workspace filled with men? You know, what could you say to that person as they start that journey, if you could go back and have a fresh start from I'm going to wear the power bun and the glasses and the suit, and where that maybe served you, but what advice could you lend to a woman entering into the phase of entrepreneurship or business ownership, or being surrounded by men in their everyday interaction in a professional setting?
So I think, don't try to fit in. Like, for me, I went to a conference one time and they invited everybody out to the dinner afterwards, right? And then they're like, oh, and we're going to go to this cigar bar, and then we're going to go and see these girls. And they're like, oh, but you probably don't. And I'm like, no, you're correct. I have no desire to do that. I'll talk to you tomorrow. That's fine, right? But to me, it's just be you. Be who you're going to be, because if you're intelligent, if you're well-spoken, if you're good at what you're doing, if you know your stuff inside and out. And if you know that, then you can have the business conversations that need to be had that show that you're capable and you're intelligent. But it also, I think, shows like a sense of character for who you are, where you're not trying to fit in and you're not willing to change those things or to be different for somebody else, which I think as a business owner and as when I look for other people, I want people who are strong. I want people who are confident. When I say that, but I still feel like women have to do it in a kind way.
Yeah.
I don't think that we get to be as outspoken or as demanding.
You think that could come across as bitchy rather than strong, or like
Often.
what would that is that what I'm hearing in
yes. that? And I yes, very much. And so for me, I think it's been a learning curve of like speaking in a way that is still kind and is still thoughtful. But I think that comes naturally to most women. And so I just would say, like, don't hide who you are. Like, if you're kind and you're thoughtful and that's who you are, it's okay to be that and intelligent and well-spoken.
And you think that what I'm hearing in that is that sometimes women are trying to hold their own in what could be considered a man's world, and they might over masculine themselves through being sharply spoken or whatever that may be. And you're saying that it's been to your advantage to be who you are?
Well, it's the same thing I say to my kids. We want to be friends with people who want to be friends with us. Do I really want to force someone to do business with me who does not respect me? That relationship never works. Like, if they don't just have a respect for you as a person, for who you are, for where you are, why would you ever want to be in business with them? Because they're going to talk down to you the whole time. They're going to disrespect you. They're going to go behind your back and do the thing that they think is best, even if you don't. So maybe it makes it a little bit more difficult, but I find that then the relationships that you do make and the people that you are in business with, it's such a better relationship because there's a level of respect there that sometimes is missing.
Yeah. I think that almost answers a question I was curious about prior to, is that once people find out who you are, the phone calls come and every major deal, I'm sure, has been presented to you. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how you've gotten good at saying no or being efficient with your time in a way that's going to protect your clients and the business for the way that you guys have scaled it?
So for me, a lot of times when there's a no, I call people directly. I'm very direct, but I will say our answer is no. Would you like to know why? Because maybe they don't even care and they're just like, okay, next.
Moving. Yeah.
So I'm willing to have those conversations and say, these are the things that were problematic for us. And sometimes they say, can we fix that? And I'm like, no, it's just a no for me. But so I give people the option. I let them know. I try not to beat around the bush. And sometimes I'm a little harsh and not on purpose, but I just am like, I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste your time. So my answer on this one is no. If you'd like to know why, I'm happy to have that conversation. And some people will say yes, and I'll go through and I'll say, well, when I did this background check on you, we found these things. When I did this, we found this. You told us it was this way, but when I dug a little more, I found out it was this way. And while it being that way is not a deal breaker, you trying to hide that it was that way is the deal breaker for me. So I do a lot of research just to make sure that everything functions as they say it functions. And if it doesn't, then we don't do business because then I feel like they're hiding things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what else are you hiding? These are the things that I was able to uncover with Google. What else are you hiding? And I call places and I do things that are a little bit maybe not normal for compliance, but it's because I have had success with that. And I've realized that that's where you find these weird hiccups and figure out what people are hiding.
Wow.
So I can give you so we had a guy that we were going to do some houses with again.
Okay.
These would have been B, C class real estate out in Indiana at the time. And he had this foolproof system and all these things, right? And I went, that's amazing. And he's somebody that we actually knew from prior business dealings and had some good and some bad experiences, but the bad ones were not due to him. And so he came in and he had all these things and we went through all these meetings and these interviews and I did all these background checks and all these things. And then I said, I need you to explain to me this process. I said, I'm not going to call your people. I'm not trying to buy those houses outside of you. I have no desire to fix houses in Indiana. I don't have a construction crew there, but I need to understand what it is you do. And so he went through and he explained all of this stuff to me and he explained all of these things. And then he gave me some sample deals that he had done. From those sample deals, I was able to pull up the county recorder documents. I was able to pull up previous deeds. I was able to pull up all of these things. And then I was able to find the companies that he was using. And then I pulled up all of the things that those companies were doing. And I found out that he was padding the numbers by about $5,000 a house, which is not a big deal to me at all. Like if the numbers still worked, they still worked, right? But I gave him like 5 opportunities to explain to me where he made money on the deal. Because to me, it's important that he makes money on the deal so that we're both taken care of and we're both happy with the arrangement that we have.
And in that scenario, you would have been financing scalability?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I was like, I just didn't feel like, I kept saying, he's not making enough money to support the lifestyle that he has, right? I Googled him. I know what house he lives in. I know what car he drives. I know. Yeah. And I just was like, this is not enough money to provide this lifestyle. Where is the extra money coming from? So I said, what other jobs do you do? What other things are you, is your time going to be split between this and something else? No, this is my sole focus. And so I just was like, yeah, this isn't right. Takes me back to compliance days as an IA. Like I used to have to know what people made and then know what their bank statements were and go, oh, these don't, what else do you do, right? To make sure nobody is stealing client funds. Yeah. And so it's something that I learned from that, but I've taken into doing this background on people. And because it didn't sit right, like it just didn't match up, I kept digging until I figured out what it was. And so it was 2 or 3 companies, shell companies deeper. And it was, they were buying, then flipping to another company, then flipping to another company, and then to this company where he was. And when I went back and I said, this is also your company. And he went, well, and I went, no, it is. I know it is. Just because it's a Delaware corporation and your name's not on it, it's on too many of your projects. You're somehow involved in this. And he said, okay, yeah, we're making about $5,000 on that. And I went, I would have been so okay with that because I was okay with paying this number for them, which included your $5,000. But because you were dishonest, I cannot do business with you.
Yeah. Who he was being in the business was the issue, not the business.
The business model was fantastic. I actually loved it. But that's not the person that I want to be in business with because what else are they hiding? What else will they do if push comes to shove? And I explained that to him. And I said, your business model is fantastic. You don't have to hide this. I hope that when you go into this next thing, you're just honest.
Yeah.
And hopefully the next person funds you.
Yeah.
So we've had several things like that.
That could change his whole trajectory from a standpoint of operation. Like, what a great lesson to learn. If you
learned the lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's never, for me, it's never to be harsh. It's just like, this is why. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So if they want to know, we tell them. If they don't, we don't.
Yeah.
But once we've made a decision, it's normally pretty solid.
Yeah. You mentioned a conference, and you mentioned, I mean, Emily, you work a lot.
I do.
I mean, you respond at all hours, and and there's a lot. Like, how did she do all this in this time? And you've even mentioned you've got team members that help and partners that help, and Matthew, scalability and, those kind of things. And I know you have a family. Mm-hmm. I know that you have a husband that also has a career that he really enjoys.
Yes.
And how have you balanced that? From a growing up, you should be a mother, you should have the kids, writing the paper, this is what I want to do.
Right.
Because I know you do both.
I do.
You don't occur for me as this, I'm the career woman, I'm not present, you'd have to correct me on these, but I feel like you're involved in the PTO at your kids' schools, and you're running the fundraisers, and you're doing the extracurriculars, and you're all of it. Is that an alignment part? How are you doing all of that? One, from a standpoint of how you thought life was going to look, from I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, to now this owner in a very large organization that requires your time and decision-making and responsibility. How are you doing both?
So,
and I'll brag on you a little bit from there. Like, I'll say both efficiently.
So I constantly hear things and people say, you've got to have balance. I disagree. I think it is okay to live an unbalanced life. And I think that there's a time and a place for everything in that life. And so for me, like, there are weeks where I work 60 hours a week, and then I work 20 hours a week at my kids' school, and I still go to their wrestling tournaments and their volleyball tournaments and some weeks there is no time for me. And I have just decided I'm okay with that right now.
No time for you personally?
Personally.
Okay,
right.
I was mom, and I was owner and partner and
that was it this week.
Wife?
Right? Sometimes yes.
Sometimes okay, but like, you're saying that you're okay with some of those weeks, or you feel like they're even necessary.
Where there's just yes. And so I am lucky that my husband is super supportive. So we had a conversation about 8 years ago now. He was a school teacher and was at the time doing 3 sports, I believe. So he was a volleyball coach, a basketball coach, and a football coach. So he was gone every single night and every single weekend. And it just got to the point where I was like, we can't both be gone all the time because we have these children that we have said we're going to raise. And when we first got married and decided to have kids, we were like, somebody is going to be home when our kids get home. Somebody is going to take our kids to these things. Our kids are going to participate in extracurricular activities because we believe that that is good for them as people. And so we sat down and we had some tough conversations. And this was right about the time, it was about a year after we had started the funds. And I just basically said, I am gone more and more and more. And I cannot pick the kids up at 2 and go to the after school activities and go to these things and make dinner every night. And then after I get the kids in bed at 8 or 9 o'clock, I'm working until midnight, and then I'm up at 6. And I did that for a couple years. And I just got to the point where I was burned out. I was exhausted all the time. And I just said, I cannot. Like, do I want to keep doing this where I am fulfilling like 100% of the mom things, and I'm baking cookies for all the people at your school, and I'm on the PTO board at my kids' elementary school, and I'm
flying to vet a property in a company here, and
I'm doing it outside of schedules, and I'm right. And so I went and looked at, I think it was 42 properties in 3 days in 4 states one time. And I got back and I was so exhausted. And the next morning I still had to get up at 6 a.m. and get the kids to school. And yes. And I just was like, something has to give. Like, I don't know if it's me mentally or me emotionally or me physically, but I just can't keep doing this. So we sat down and we had a conversation, and it was really tough because I think my husband, a lot of who he is comes from providing for our family and came from being that figure in our home. And we just sat down and had a conversation and I said to him, look, we can't both be gone as much as we are. I have this huge potential, but if it's not what's right for our family, I will walk away from it.
Wow.
Because this is what's most important. Sorry. And we talked through all of the scenarios and what it looked like. And he said, this is so hard for me to not be the person who's paying our house payment and providing for our family, but this is the best option. And so we sat down and kind of did a reassignment of roles and a reassignment of some of the things. And it took us a couple years to figure it out because it was just this give and take and this back and forth. And he quit his job as a teacher and became a stay-at-home dad. And he volunteered at the kids' school, and then he ended up working in a kindergarten classroom for a couple years. And so it's been this kind of a roller coaster of figuring out how life works. But
because he is good at what he did too. I
And
know
he
some of his
loved
former
teaching.
players, and I know some of
Yes.
his former students because it was local, and they connect
loved
the
his job.
dots. Like he was good at it
He
too.
loved,
you
yes.
know, and
He loves coaching, loves teaching, loves all of that. So it was a sacrifice for him. But we just sat down and we said to have the best opportunity for our children and the best opportunity for success in life, I think we have to do this. And I was like, and if any time that changes, we can come back to this again.
you're telling your partners the same message essentially,
Yep.
or they there's a likelihood that they'd
So-
understand where you're at. in
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Right. And so we had those conversations, which, I mean, those were really hard conversations to have. But in the end, we just said, this is what's best for our family and this is what we're going to do. And we'll kind of roll with it as it happens. So he now takes the kids to school in the morning so that I'm not up at 6. I get to sleep until 6:30 or whatever that looks like. Right. Or I have time to go to the gym in the morning when I normally would have been running kids to school. And then he goes later in the day because he's not at work.
Yeah.
He loves coaching, so he's continued to coach. And even that was problematic for us. He was a high school volleyball coach, and so he's leaving at the time the kids are getting home. So he quit coaching high school volleyball and went into coaching club, which is later in the evening after I can be home so that the kids who have evening practices I can take while he's gone to work. And so it's been a give and take. And it's been wonderful that I do have flexibility in my schedule. So if I need to come home at 2, I can, so that he can make it to things that he's doing. And then even more recently, our daughter is a volleyball player and my husband is a volleyball coach, and my son is a football player and my husband is a football coach. So he's coaching the teams that his kids are on, which he swore he would never do because he's like, now my kids have to be better than anybody on the team to get playtime.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's okay. Make them better. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there has been some give and take, but with that, it allows him to go because I'll never complain. My children are intelligent and athletic and so talented and wonderful, but it means that our schedules are way busier.
Yeah.
And I have allowed them to go and do the things that they think they might be passionate about so that we can figure it out if that's what they want to do. And so with him coaching their sports, then he's taking one and I'm taking the other 2 to whatever their activity is for the evening and vice versa. And so it's worked, but it's a juggling act for sure. And I think there are things that have to give. Like, I haven't been to the grocery store in 2 years. I order all of my groceries delivered to my house, even though I love grocery shopping because it's like a break, right? And I just get to mindlessly go up and down the aisles. But I don't have an extra hour. I can't run to the store and grab milk because my schedule is too full. And so those things give.
Walmart delivery,
Yes.
all the things.
Yes, I
that
have all the
comes to
delivery
it.
services
Yeah.
and all, and I have things on auto ship from Amazon that come every month because I forget to buy laundry detergent. So we have found ways to make that work, but I still think when you are blessed with so much that you have to find time to give back. And so that's why I do volunteer at all my kids' schools. And I'm the PTO president at the elementary school. I have been for 4 years. This is my last year because my youngest is a 6th grader. And I was on that board for, I think, 7 years. I'm also on the board at the junior high because by that age, nobody wants to do it. So I help out with that. I oversee, they have a cares closet. So it is clothing and shoes and things like that for kids who just don't have it. And Poston Junior High does this amazing job of it. They took an old portable and they turned it into like a boutique. And in that boutique, the kids can go shopping. So they get tickets for doing good things throughout school. So they shop and they come out with these cute little boutique bags full of their clothing that they do. And they then allow the kids who need things to also go shop on the same days so that there is no stigma around having clothing from there or having things from there. So everybody at the school wears it. So it's cool. And I love that. So that's one of the projects that I'm over at the junior high. And we do a lot of the nonprofit giving with that, and I work on all those things. So I find what I guess are passion projects at the schools that my children are at that maybe take a little bit more time or a little bit more effort, but they're things I love, and I see the difference that they make, and so then it's worth it to me to do those things. They say if you need something done, ask a busy person to do it.
Yeah.
So
I try and do the math on. How did she do that today? Emily, I go into your office.
And it's a wreck.
No, I wasn't going to say a wreck. What I was going to say is that if I went in there once every 3 weeks or once a month, that you would have what would be 2 full offices full of new things for donations. And I've asked you, I've asked Luke, certainly there are easier ways to provide, to get tax benefits and write-offs.
Absolutely.
Easier ways, much easier ways and less time-consuming ways. And what I've learned, it's who you are. It's not about now, may there be certain tax benefits to certain types of donations? Sure.
Absolutely.
But that's not the...
No, there are easier ways.
That's the icing on the cake, so to speak, of who you are. And who you are is making sure that kids have jackets in the winter and backpacks before school starts and all of these projects. And it's amazing.
So I think it comes from when we were young. So I didn't know we were poor. I had no idea that we were poor. I didn't know that stores existed where you could go buy clothes.
Okay.
We got hand-me-downs from everyone and we wore them. And I thought that that's what everybody did. My parents did a great job. We thought we were...
This is great.
It was wonderful.
New to me.
I had yes, and I had a great childhood. But we shared shoes. So we used to have PE 2 days a week, and me and Luke and Ashley all had the same size feet at one time. So my parents bought 2 pairs of tennis shoes, and whoever had PE that day got to wear the tennis shoes, and the other people wore flip-flops or whatever we had around. I had no idea that wasn't normal. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so as I've gotten older, I've realized how much assistance we got when we were younger, when my dad quit the Air Force and moved here and started a new job, and we just didn't have it. And so I've looked at that, and I've seen these kids that people look down on because of their circumstances or treat differently because of that. And I'm like, that's me. I am that child. And I'm like, and nobody would believe that today. I walk into a room and I take over the meeting and I do what I'm going to do. And I have my own clothes and my own car. But I just look at that and I go, if anybody just shows them some kindness or shows them that they can fit in or gives them the clothes that make them feel okay about themselves so that they're not embarrassed, or I feel like that is a starting point for a lot of these kids. And so it's kind of a personal thing for me.
Yeah.
But I feel like having those small things so you don't have to worry about them. Like having a jacket. I had one sweatshirt as a kid. I didn't know that was weird. I wore the same sweatshirt for 2.5 years until I outgrew it. And it was a hand-me-down from someone. I had no idea that people had more than one jacket. Or that it just never occurred to me. But then we did a project at Willis Junior High. And I was talking with their social worker, and she said, we have entire families that share a jacket. And I was like, and she's like, so the kids, depending on who's going to be outside recess that day or who's going to be, they're picking and choosing who gets to wear the jacket on any specific day or on any, and I just went, so these kids can't go out on recess and play because they didn't get the jacket today. They're going in and reading a book in the library, even if they want to go outside and play, or even if. And so we raised a bunch of jackets and did that for them. But it's things like that where I'm like, give them the opportunity to be children, to have just the bare minimum of things.
Yeah.
And I think that it makes a difference in their lives. And especially if it's in a situation where people don't know where it's coming from, or that they don't have what everybody else has.
Yeah.
So it is, yes, it's something I'm passionate about. We do a lot of those, a lot of birthday gifts, a lot of things like that go to different charities that help kids.
I hear this concept of that money changes people. And I have a belief around it magnifies who you are.
I would agree.
And I love this side of it.
I love the
you're
ability to do those things.
Giver and nurturer, and as you've worked your butt off and been fortunate enough to build what you guys have built, that's who you are, and you still spend time doing that.
I think it's important to be part of it.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I could pay people to go do it for me now, or I don't have to be part of it. But I love the joy that it brings. So my staff does it. We have days where we're super busy and days where we're not.
Yeah.
And so it was something that I did all by myself. I literally did it in my garage at home and in my front walkway. And my husband would be like, oh my gosh, please just get the boxes out of our house. Just this constant flow of boxes. And then I finally was like, you know what? I'm just going to bring it to work and I'm going to let everybody do it.
Yeah.
So I talked it over with Matt and Luke.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, this is something I'm passionate about and I want to do this. So we're either all in or we're all out. Is this okay? And Luke went, oh, that feels like a lot of work. And I was like, I'm not asking for your help. I'm just asking you to be okay with us doing it at work.
Yeah.
And they went, yeah, that's fine. And if you want help, we'll help. And I was like, I know you will. But so I brought it to work, and now my employees in downtime will go sort things and do things, and they'll go with me to do deliveries and see the places or the things that we're doing. And I think it brings them joy too.
Yeah.
I think that it makes them feel like they're doing more than just sitting at a computer desk doing paperwork all day long, which I love.
Yeah. Good for you. I love that. I love
it's
that
kind of
part
fun.
of it. I have 3 more questions for you that I would love to hear the answers on. One, do you have like a go-to for going at the rate that you have, or especially in the first couple years to get the funds off the ground, and you were ultimate mom, ultimate, you wore all the hats, and you had these experiences of balance and unbalance and all over the place. Did you have a go-to energy-wise? Was it, you mentioned working out in the mornings, was it massages, was it energy drinks, was it was it all of it? But do you have any one thing that you looked at that was the thing that got you through the hard years? So
I think that it is finding joy in small things for me, because am I hearing that as could that be in the domain or the category of mindset? I think it is. It's daily affirmations. It's finding joy in simple things in life. It's looking for the good in people, I think that's what keeps me able to do those things, because I know the outcome of what is going to happen, because I've had different routines in different times when it worked with schedules and kids and things. But for me, my husband will laugh and say, I wake up happy every morning. I am excited for the day every day.
You're a morning person.
So much.
Okay.
I get up in the morning. I normally wake up before my alarm goes off. I go get my coffee. I sit down some days and drink it slowly. Other days I'm like, oh, it's my day to make dinner. And I start in the morning prepping. And, or we have a dog who's nervous, and my in-laws' dog is with us. So she jumps the fence every chance she gets. So lately I've been just outside with the dogs in the morning. But I wake up every day and I'm excited for the day. I know what my schedule is. I know all these things we're going to accomplish. I know the things my kids are going to be involved in. My kids laugh at me. I have a truck. It's an old truck, and I'm probably never going to get rid of it. And I will drive it until I can no longer climb up into it. I just love it. Yeah. And somebody said to me the other day, well, it's about time that you got a new truck. And I'm like, I love my truck. Every time I walk out to my truck, I am so excited that it is my truck. This is you. There's a real, I almost called it stubbornness about you of nope, this is my house. This is where I want it. I'm moving there. This is my truck. Nothing to do other than I don't care what anyone else thinks. This is mine, and I'm happy. And I love it. And I'm happy with it. And so I think it's finding joy in the things that you have. And I go to work every day knowing what I'm accomplishing, knowing that I'm helping people with their retirement, knowing that my in-laws have money with us, and my parents have money with us, and my brother's in-laws have money with us, and my neighbor across the street whose daughter is best friends with my daughter have money with us, right? All these things. And so for me, I go to work every day knowing that I am making their lives better. Whether they know or not, I know. And I go into all of these things with like, I do the PTO stuff, and we do all these stupid little things for the kids, and I love every one of them. We did these little frogs for Leap Day, and we explained what leap year is and all of that, and we gave out little green frogs to every kid at the school. And they were so excited about it, and that to me is like that joy.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess mindset, but I am excited about the things that I get to do every day. I'm excited to see my kids wrestle. I'm excited to see my kids do well in school. We had Battle of the Books last night. I was excited that my daughter read 12 books in 12 days and went and answered questions about them. So it's little things, but I think it's just, for me, I am eternally optimistic about what I'm going to accomplish in the day.
And that's that for you translated into
being able to do
fuel
more
to the engine on the nights with little sleep and the sick kids, plus the deadlines at the office, plus the volunteer after. Like that was I guess what I'm hearing in that is that you knew what the potential outcome could be. You knew how that could affect your family.
Absolutely.
And clients and friends and family, extended family. And that was the engine that kept you going. And
I think too, I know there's an end. Like, if that makes sense. So if I had to push as hard as I've pushed till I was 65, I don't know that I would sign up for that.
You're saying you picked something that would generate a certain type of wealth that would allow you to not have to do it for 20 years.
To retire sooner. Okay. To live a better life later. So I guess I'm trading some hours now for some hours later.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I look at it. And it's the same thing like with my volunteering at the school. Like, that has a shelf life. My kids are going to outgrow that stage, and then there's no longer an ability. So I just was like, you know what? I've got 8 years of this. I'm going to go hard for 8 years, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. And so I think for me, having an end in sight too, that I'm working towards, that every little thing I do is putting me closer to that, makes it easier too.
Yeah, that's so great. We spoke about you being the outlier in the office setting. Whose assistant are you? Or, and how you've overcome that. And you touched on it a little bit, but I think it's useful for people to know how you've navigated being the person in the family that had the opportunity to have this, I'll call it a generational effect from a wealth building standpoint. And, you're right. I don't know of too many men that just wouldn't impact in some way, shape, or form. I could see if it's one thing, if it's like, oh, well, she makes $30,000 more than me, so we made a decision or something. It's like, well, no, like you guys created something that can literally impact generations. It's the definition for me, at least, of generational wealth. How have you been able, or could you lend any advice for somebody that is a woman in that scenario that has a great opportunity for their family, that you could just give a little bit of advice for how you handle the scenario of you meet somebody new and it's what do you guys do? Or the looking to your, like, oh, so what do you do? Or just assuming you're the, you're the stay at home and things like that. Do you have anything that you could lend to somebody just from who you've been around that's created some success for you too?
So I think one of the most important things in my situation is to acknowledge the things that my husband did do. Like when I was a stay-at-home mom selling furniture out of the garage, he did work full-time and then worked a second job and then worked a summer job and did all of those things so that we could pay our house payment and so that we could do that. So then that house grew in value and we traded up to a new house. And then that house grew in value and we traded up to a new house. And all of that is due to his work, right? Like that was us working together to raise children, to have a family, to do those things. And I think that sometimes people forget to acknowledge, like, where were you at and what situation were you in that allowed you to even have the opportunity? And so without all of his, I mean, he used to work 60 and 70 hours a week, and so without all of that, I don't think that I would have had the opportunity to even be in the situation that we were in.
Does that look like you showing gratitude behind closed doors for that's helped with around there, or an acknowledgement that allows for
So I think it's both. I think in my personal situation, I think to acknowledge it to my husband is more important, so that he knows that I value what he did and value what he still does for our family. Because, like I said, I would not, if there wasn't somebody there to take my kids to school, then I wouldn't be doing what I was doing, because they're more important to me than making millions of dollars. So I think that it's all of those things. But it does happen. People go, "Oh, what do you do?" And he goes, "I coach volleyball." And they go, "At a college?" He goes, "No, I just coach a club team." And he just leaves it.
Yeah,
and
that's what you asked. I told you. Yeah.
And so he doesn't feel a need to stick up for me in any way, which I appreciate. And the reality is, like, if somebody asks me what I do, I tell them. I don't normally get into the weeds because most people don't really care. People that are interested, I have those conversations. But because I'm not sales, that it's not my job to go find new clients and do that, I've never really developed that, like, here's what I do in this way, and I make these funds, and they do these things. I think
now people are getting an idea of how you just have just flown under the radar for so long.
Most people that know me just know I'm a mom.
Yeah.
Because I do go to all my kids' things. I leave work early at 2:00 to go to the wrestling meet. I go to every track meet. So I think most people that know me, if they don't say, like, "Hey, do you work?" probably don't even know I work.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, because I don't want them to treat me different or to treat my children different.
Yeah. I hope that this platform and these conversations can serve people in whatever they're looking for. And one, they could hear it in the form of, like, yeah, if I wanted to go become an entrepreneur and start a business, I could learn from here. And at the same time of, like, you know, what I hear a lot about your life is alignment. This works for us. And because it works for us, it works. And, you know, that's great. I just curious around that scenario. And I love the aspect of, I think that, let's remove him, her, gender, whatever it is out of the equation. There's a team oftentimes around the story of entrepreneurship.
I think there has to be. I don't think that you can do it successfully if somebody is not supporting you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's as instrumental in the success, you know, and you could hear a quote, "Oh, behind every good man, there's a better woman," or whatever it may be. And it's like, well, what is that? What are they saying in that? That means, well, what that could have looked like while I was putting these hours at the office, that I had all the support I needed in the other domains of my life that allowed this opportunity to excel. And that's great.
I think that's absolutely what it is. I think that it has to be a joint effort in whatever it is, if you've got a spouse and children at home.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just make that choice unilaterally and do it and that ends well.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us have, like, an insight into that.
Yeah.
You guys have created something pretty great in my eyes, and I would think that would, you know, others would agree if they knew more. And now you have, is it fair to say, I mean, I want to say hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects out there right now?
Yes. I think we're about $500 million right now.
And what are you looking forward to now? Whether that's new investments coming up. I mean, you're doing development and you're doing acquisitions and you're doing venture capital, you know, you're doing all of it. Is there an investment class or vehicle that you're looking forward to, or just the theme of what are you looking forward to the most in the world of investments and placing the capital that you guys have? And, like, what does the next 2 years look like for you?
So I think for me, there's not one specific avenue that I love more than any others. I think one of the things that's made us successful is that we are very opportunistic. We will look at any project in any environment and kind of just vet it for what it is, which means that we don't always have a set system to vet things, but it has opened doors for us that are just insane. And so I love new and different projects. I love getting involved in new and different things that we're doing, in finding new areas or new ideas that maybe are a little untried, or just coming up with new ways to do things. Like when we bought the buildings and we went, oh, but we need something to go in these buildings to raise the value. So instead of trying to get people to come into the buildings, we just made a business that fit. Right. So it's things like that, and the outside the box thinking.
That's the trampoline parks
Yes.
and the salon suites and the all the things. Okay.
So,
yeah.
And that's that's something that we do, is when we go and we find a killer deal on a building, we go, well, what business can we create and put in here? Because having it rented out raises the value of the building like crazy, and then we can sell off the business as well. So instead of dealing with a tenant that maybe is difficult, or doing all this TI for someone and then having them run out of money 3 months later. And so that's something that we have become. I think that might be my favorite thing that we do, just because it's new and different and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But there's not really one set avenue that I love.
If it makes dollars, it makes sense. Let's go vet it and learn about it.
That's how I feel.
All right.
That is how I feel.
There's a move coming for you?
Yes.
I don't want to call it riding off into the sunset and be cliche because it's Texas and make it think like it's this Western, but you've created a business that's going to allow for you guys to go and move.
Correct. I can do my job from anywhere.
Texas, and life can maybe even slow down a little bit.
I'm
over
hoping
the
a
next
little bit of
few
slow
years.
down. It's a little bit slower life.
I don't know if you could stop the train if you tried right now completely, but
I close on my house next week, so probably not. But I think it'll be a good move for my kids. So I kind of went about that the same way I go about everything else in my life. And I made a bunch of spreadsheets, and and I just realized I don't think that my kids can have a quality of life here. And yes, I can pay them to have a quality of life here. And yes, I can buy them a house. But those were things that were instrumental in me being the person that I am. I want them to save for a first house, and to have to put the money into that, and to have to fix it up themselves and do those things, because I think that goes to character and goes to caring about the things that you have and putting the effort in. And I just realized I don't think they can do that where we live anymore. Starter houses are so expensive and everything else. And so I kind of made a pros and cons list, and I went through and I vetted all these places, and I talked to all my kids and I said, what would be your ideal? And I made this, I think it's 72 lines on a spreadsheet. And I went through and I found states that would be acceptable, where the weather patterns were good, where the...
Wow, I thought you just picked a place and you were going. This is, you were doing...
this is 2 years. This is 2 years of research.
You're looking for your version of an emerging market,
So this is 2 years of research, right, that I've learned how to do from other things. And so I vetted all these places and did all this stuff. And I went through and I took my kids' sports and my kids' music interests, and the need to be close to a hospital for my in-laws and all these other things. And I put them in this big old spreadsheet. And then I went through and basically did check boxes of different things that fit. And the place that had the most boxes checked, I said to my husband, we're going to go here and we're going to go visit. And if it's what I think it's going to be, we're going to move. Are you okay with that? And he said, okay. And so we went, and we actually went to a few different places, but the place that was number one on my list, I think, was the second place that we went to. And we went there, and he said, even breathing is better here. And so we went around, and I was like, the people are so nice, and the houses are so cheap. And so we just said, okay, when are we doing this? We did that in December of this year. And I said, okay, let's go. And so we're moving this summer because I think it will give my children a better opportunity at a quality of life.
Yeah, that's so great that you're creating all of that. And I didn't realize so much went into it, which makes sense.
Which with my personality makes sense.
It's fitting. Well, one, I appreciate time as much as anything. And a reoccurring theme with you is that you're willing to give it. And I hope that we can continue to provide any sort of value, because we feel forever indebted to you for sharing the knowledge that you have. and just letting us peek behind the curtains of what you've created and what it took to create it. And
Thank you.
we're grateful for you, and I am glad that more people get to hear your story. You are an amazing creator, and what you've done is nothing short of amazing, and I hope that, you know, somebody that feels that they're a secretary right now could just see what's possible, or a parent could see that, man, look what could happen if I can instill a belief system around you can create what you would want to create in whatever domain it is.
Absolutely.
Whether that is being what we thought at one time was the best stay-at-home mom on the planet to a managing partner in, you know, having $500 million of assets under management and projects going and those kind of things. And you are a perfect example of what we hope that people, you know, stories that we hope people get to hear. And
Thank you.
just thanks for spending time with us. And we're grateful that you came.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Emily.
Dad, are you sure you know what you're doing?